As a former state prosecutor and defense attorney, I'm sometimes asked the question, what is actually considered a self-defense incident? Well, a self-defense incident is any time where if you're in court, your attorney's going to be raising something called the privilege of self-defense. Well, what's that? Very simply, it's not defense of stuff or things, it's defense of you, defense of yourself. To do so, you have to be in some form of threat. Now, if you use deadly force, then you have to have been under threat of deadly force. If you're under threat of something less than deadly force, then you need to have used something other than deadly force. In other words, your reaction must be somewhat proportionate to the threat that you are being faced with. This is called an affirmative defense, or sometimes known as a privilege, depending upon which state you may be from. What that means is that your attorney or your legal team is going to have to show to a judge and a jury that certain triggering criteria and conditions were met in order to raise that defense. Otherwise, no one's going to be allowed to argue on your behalf. But that's the important part here, is that anytime you're talking about an affirmative defense or a privileged defense, the actual burden's on you initially in order to show that the triggering criteria, the triggering facts were present. Otherwise, the judge is not going to let your attorney even argue those facts in front of a jury. This engages what's called a burden shifting analysis that happens in the court. In other words, first the burden starts on you, and you're going to have to show that those triggering criteria were present. The fact that the person was attacking you with that gun, that knife, they swung first, whatever it might be. Then, once your defense team has proven that to a sufficient degree, which depends upon which state and jurisdiction you may be in, what's going to happen next is then the prosecutor will usually have to then disprove that privilege beyond a reasonable doubt. As you can imagine, that can be oftentimes extraordinarily difficult for a prosecutor to do. That's why the privilege of self-defense is so important. But remember, and it needs to be emphasized, self-defense is self-defense. We're not talking about you wake up in the middle of the night and you see someone breaking into your car and you decide to shoot at them. You're not defending yourself in that case, you're defending your car. That's self-defense, not self-defense.